My son gave me the wrong wedding date so I wouldn't show up. I'm Frank Wilson, and I've been a welder for 35 years. What David didn't know was that his embarrassing blue-collar father had something in his truck that would change everything. A $1.5 million check with his name on it. By the end of that night, I'd torn it up in his face in front of 200 people, and he'd lost more than just money. He'd lost an empire he never knew existed. I stayed quiet for years, thinking silence was respect. I was wrong. See, when your own son lies to keep you away from the biggest day of his life, when he chooses shame over family, that's when a working man has to make a choice. Stay silent and enable disrespect, or stand up and teach the most expensive lesson about dignity you'll ever witness. If you're watching this, please subscribe and let me know where you're watching from. Here's how a welder taught his son the cost of shame. The disrespect didn't start with the wedding date. It started 3 years ago when David got promoted to marketing director at his Manhattan agency. First incident, Christmas dinner, 2021. David brought Victoria home for the first time. I'd worked a double shift that Friday to make sure I could get Saturday off. Still had grease under my fingernails when I shook her hand. Dad works with his hands, David said like he was apologizing. Not Dad's a master welder or Dad built half the infrastructure in Queens. Just works with his hands. Victoria smiled that Connecticut smile. How interesting, she said, then moved her purse away from my chair. I let it slide. First meetings are awkward. Second incident, David's housewarming party, spring 2022. His new apartment in Manhattan. $8,500 a month, he told everyone. Twice what I paid for my mortgage. I wore my best shirt, clean, pressed, no holes. Still got introduced as, my dad, he's in construction. Not even he's a welder, just construction, like I held stop signs on road crews. His coworker asked what I did. Heavy industrial welding, I said. Build supports for skyscrapers, bridges, subway tunnels. Cool, the guy said, genuinely interested. David changed the subject. That night, driving back to Queens in my 2018 F-150, I started noticing things. How David's voice changed when he talked about his work versus mine. How he'd check his phone whenever I mentioned a job site. How he'd started saying we when talking about Victoria's family trips, but I when talking about visiting me. The text messages made it worse. Short answers. Busy. Call you later. Can't this weekend. But Victoria's family? David drove to Connecticut every other weekend. Posted photos of their country club, their yacht, their family traditions. Never posted anything about our family traditions, like fixing his motorcycle when he was 16. Like teaching him to weld that summer he couldn't find a job. Like paying for his college when the scholarship money fell short. I told myself he was just busy. New relationship, new responsibilities. Kids grow up, move on. That's normal. Then came the engagement announcement. March 2024. I found out on Facebook. Not a phone call. Not a visit. Facebook. Victoria Sterling and David Wilson are engaged. Big photo of them at some fancy restaurant. Her ring probably cost more than my truck. I called him that night. Congratulations, son. I'm happy for you. Thanks, Dad. Silence. We're planning a small ceremony. Whatever you want. You know I'll be there. Yeah, sure. We'll talk details later. Later never came. Every conversation about the wedding got postponed. Still figuring things out. Victoria's handling the planning. You'll be the first to know. Meanwhile, his social media showed constant wedding prep. Venue tours, cake tastings, dress fittings. They had a timeline. They had a guest list. They had everything except my involvement. The exclusion was surgical, precise, professional. June 2024, I offered to help pay. David, weddings are expensive. I can contribute. Dad, that's not necessary. We've got it covered. I'm your father. Let me help. Really, Dad, we're fine. But they weren't fine. I knew what Manhattan weddings cost. I knew what David made. And I knew Victoria's family had opinions about appropriate contributions from his side. The wrong invitation arrived August 15th, hand-delivered by mail, formal as a legal document. Mr. Frank Wilson cordially invited, September 22nd, 2024, Plaza Hotel, Manhattan. Beautiful invitation. Expensive paper, gold lettering, wrong date. The real wedding was September 21st. I found out by accident. September 19th, Thursday evening. I was finishing up a job in Midtown, emergency repair on a building's fire escape system. The kind of work they call you for when someone's life depends on it being done right. My phone buzzed. Text from my old high school friend, Patty Miller. Now Judge Patricia Miller, Brooklyn Family Court. Frank, So excited to officiate David's wedding Saturday. See you there. Saturday, September 21st. My invitation said Sunday, September 22nd. I stared at that text for 10 minutes. Sitting in my truck, still in my work clothes, tools in the bed rattling every time the wind picked up. 1 day off. Just 1 day. Not a mistake, not a typo, a deliberate choice to keep me away. I drove home to Queens thinking about what silence costs a man, what swallowing disrespect does to your soul, what message you send when you enable your own erasure. That night, I pulled out the documents I'd been preparing for months. David's wedding gift. Not just the $1.5 million check, the real gift. Partnership papers for Wilson Industrial Properties, 3 buildings in Queens worth $4, $2 million each, total value, $12.6 million. 50% ownership transferred to David Wilson upon marriage. I'd built this empire quietly, one investment at a time. Bought my first building in 1995 with money saved from 15 years of welding. Bought the second in 2003 when the market crashed. Bought the third in 2009 during the recession when sellers were desperate. Steady rent income, commercial tenants, long-term leases, the kind of boring blue-collar wealth that society folks never see coming. David didn't know. Nobody knew except my accountant and lawyer. I'd planned to surprise him at the wedding. Hand him the partnership papers during my father of the groom speech. Watch his face when he realized his embarrassing welder dad had set him up for life. Now I sat at my kitchen table, looking at those papers. Looking at that check. Looking at my son's real wedding invitation next to the fake one they'd sent me. The stakes were clear. If I stayed silent, if I honored their deception, I'd be teaching David that disrespect works. That shame pays dividends. That you can erase people without consequences. He'd get married thinking he'd successfully hidden his blue-collar father. Victoria's family would never know where the money really came from. David would inherit an empire while denying the man who built it. Worse, he'd never learn. The disrespect would continue. The shame would deepen. Eventually, I'd become the grandfather they hide from their children, the family secret whispered about but never acknowledged. But if I showed up, if I confronted this lie publicly, the stakes were even higher. David would be humiliated in front of his new wife, her family, their social circle. Our relationship might never recover. The wedding could be ruined. Victoria might blame me for destroying their perfect day. And the money? The partnership? The empire I'd built for him? That would depend on how he reacted. How he chose to handle the truth in front of the people whose approval he valued more than his father's dignity. Friday night, I made my decision. I ironed my best suit. The navy blue one I'd bought for David's college graduation. Still fit? Still looked respectable? I put the $1.5 million check in my jacket pocket. The partnership papers in a manila envelope. I was going to that wedding, not to cause trouble, not to make a scene, just to be there, to stand in the back if necessary, to watch my son get married, even if he didn't want me there. What happened next would be up to David. Saturday morning, September 21st, the real wedding day. I drove to Manhattan in my F-150. Traffic was light for a Saturday. I had Patty's text with the correct details. Plaza Hotel, Oak Room, 4 p.m. ceremony. I parked 6 blocks away. Didn't want David to see my truck and panic before I could talk to him. The Plaza Hotel lobby was everything you'd expect. Marble floors, crystal chandeliers, people in $1,000 outfits checking their phones. I felt every stare, but I kept walking. Elevator to the mezzanine level, Oak Room straight ahead, wedding setup in progress, white chairs in perfect rows, flowers that probably cost more than most people's cars, staff in black uniforms adjusting microphones and testing sound. I spotted David immediately. He was standing near the altar talking with the wedding planner, navy tuxedo probably custom made, hair perfect, looking like everything Victoria's family wanted in a son-in-law. He saw me before I reached him, the color drained from his face. Complete shock, like seeing a ghost. "Dad?" His voice cracked. How did you... Hello, David. The wedding planner sensed tension and disappeared. "Dad, the wedding's tomorrow. You got the wrong day." I pulled out both invitations, the real one from Patty, the fake one they'd sent me. "Saturday the 21st, I said, reading from Patty's text. "Or Sunday the 22nd? I held up their invitation. David's mouth opened. Nothing came out. 35 years I've been straightforward with you, I said. Never lied once, even when the truth hurt. "Dad, I can explain." "Which date is real, David?" He looked around the room. Guests would start arriving in 2 hours. Victoria was probably upstairs getting ready. Her family was coming from Connecticut. Saturday, he whispered. So you lied. Dad, it's complicated. No, it's simple. You gave me wrong information so I wouldn't be here. David's face shifted, guilt to defensiveness in seconds. Look, Dad, this isn't about you. It's about Victoria's family. They have certain expectations. About what? About the kind of people we associate with. People like me. People who don't understand this world. I looked around the oak room. This world of honest work and family respect. This world of social connections and professional relationships. And I don't belong here. David straightened his tie, getting his confidence back. Dad, you're a welder. Victoria's father is a surgeon. Her mother sits on museum boards. Their friends are lawyers, executives, professors. They speak differently. They dress differently. They have different interests. Different from what? Different from construction work and pickup trucks and what, David? And coming home with grease under your fingernails. There it was. 30 years of raising him, and that's what he saw. Dirty hands. Those dirty hands put you through college. I know, Dad, and I'm grateful. Those dirty hands fixed your motorcycle when you couldn't afford a mechanic. I remember. Those dirty hands taught you how to build things when you couldn't find a summer job. Dad, please. And now those dirty hands embarrass you. David looked at his shoes, expensive Italian leather. It's not about embarrassment, it's about fit. I don't fit with your wife's family. You don't fit with our social circle. So you lied. So I protected you from an uncomfortable situation. I stared at my son, this man I'd raised to tell the truth, work hard, respect family, this stranger in a custom tuxedo who thought lying was protection. Protected me from what? From feeling out of place, or protected yourself from being ashamed. That's not fair. What's not fair is lying to your father about your wedding day. David checked his watch. Expensive. Swiss. Probably a gift from Victoria's parents. Dad, we can talk about this later. People are going to start arriving soon. Including me. Dad, I'm staying for the wedding, David. That's not a good idea. It's my son's wedding. It's Victoria's day. It's both your day, and I'm your father. David's jaw tightened. If you stay, you'll ruin everything. By existing? By making people uncomfortable. Which people? Important people. More important than your father? Silence. That silence told me everything I needed to know about where I stood in my son's priorities. I'll stay in the back, I said. Won't talk to anyone, won't embarrass you. Dad, please, just go home. We'll have dinner next week and talk about this. After the honeymoon? After things settle down? After you don't need me anymore? David's phone buzzed. Text message. Probably Victoria wondering where he was. I have to get ready, he said. So do I. I walked toward the back of the room, found a chair in the last row. David stood frozen for a moment, then headed for the exit. The wedding was in 2 hours. The real one was just getting started. I sat in that back row watching the final setup. Wedding staff adjusting flowers, testing microphones, arranging programs on each chair. The programs were beautiful, thick cardstock, gold embossing. Victoria Sterling and David Wilson, it read, united in love and commitment. No mention of families. No son of Frank Wilson or daughter of Robert and Patricia Sterling. Just 2 names floating in elegant script, unattached to any history or heritage. My phone buzzed. Text message from Tony Anderson. Frank, catering the Wilson-Sterling wedding today. Didn't know it was your boy. Great venue. See you in there. I stared at that text. Tony Anderson, my business partner in 3 construction projects over the last decade, owner of Anderson Premium Catering, the man handling David's wedding reception. David had no idea who was catering his wedding. Victoria probably picked Anderson's company from some high-end vendor list, never thinking to ask about connections to the blue-collar world they were trying to escape. I texted back, see you soon. Another text, this one from my property manager. Mr. Wilson, the new commercial tenant in Building 2, wants to extend their lease early. 5-year extension at current rate plus 15% increase. Good news for cash flow. Should I proceed? Building 2. The middle building in my 3-property empire. Current rent income, $28,000 per month. With the increase, $32,200 per month. I did the math quickly. The rent increase alone would generate an extra $50,400 per year, more than some people's salaries, more than David probably thought his poor welder father made in total. Approve it, I texted back. I looked around the oak room again. really looked this time. The architectural details, the crown molding, the way the light fixtures were mounted. I knew this work. I'd welded the structural supports for this renovation 15 years ago. The beams hidden behind those elegant walls, the reinforcements that made this room safe for large gatherings. My hands had built this space. My welding had made this wedding possible. But David didn't know that. To him, this was just Victoria's world. Sophisticated, expensive. Nothing to do with construction work or blue-collar labor. A hotel employee approached me. Young guy, maybe 25. "Excuse me, sir, are you with the Wilson or Sterling party?" "Wilson," I said. "Great. I'm Jake, assistant event coordinator. Just wanted to confirm. You're the groom's father?" "I am." Jake checked his tablet. "I don't see you on the seating chart. Are you giving a speech during the reception?" "A speech. Father of the groom. Traditional moment where the father welcomes the new daughter-in-law to the family, shares wisdom about marriage, tells stories about the groom's childhood." "That hadn't been discussed," I said. "No problem. I'll check with the bride and groom. Usually the father of the groom speaks right after the maid of honor." Jake walked away, tablet in hand, probably texting David about the speech situation. My jacket pocket felt heavy. The $1. $5 million check, the envelope with partnership papers, David's inheritance, waiting for the right moment. I'd planned to present everything during that traditional speech. The surprise reveal of his true inheritance, the moment when Victoria's family learned where the real money was. Now I wondered if I'd get that chance, if David would even acknowledge me publicly, if I'd remain the secret father, hidden in the back row, erased from the program and the photos and the memories. Another text from Tony Anderson. Just saw the guest list. Sterling family heavy on the doctors and lawyers. Wilson side looks light. Just you? Just me, I replied. Your boy know about your buildings? Not yet. Might be a good day for a surprise. Might be. I put my phone away and watched the empty room fill with sunlight from the tall windows. In 2 hours, this space would be full of people celebrating David and Victoria's new life together. The question was whether I'd be part of that celebration or just an unwelcome witness to my own erasure. The manila envelope crinkled when I shifted in my chair. Some surprises, I realized, work both ways. Guests started arriving at 3:30 p.m., exactly the crowd David had described. Victoria's side filled up first. Designer dresses, tailored suits, people who clearly knew how to navigate social events like this. Conversations about art galleries, vacation homes in the Hamptons, their children's acceptances to Ivy League schools. David's side stayed nearly empty. A few college friends, some co-workers from his agency, maybe 20 people total. The contrast was stark. Bride's side, 150 guests. Groom's side, 20. Victoria's family took their seats in the front row. Her father, Dr. Robert Sterling, looked exactly like Central Casting's idea of a Connecticut surgeon. Silver hair, expensive watch, posture that said he'd never doubted his place in the world. Her mother, Patricia Sterling, wore pearls that probably cost more than my truck. She surveyed the room like she was inspecting it for flaws. I stayed in my back row, invisible. The processional started at 4 p.m. sharp. Wedding march played by a string quartet. Professional videographer capturing every moment. Victoria walked down the aisle like she was born for this. Vera Wang dress, probably $45,000. Bouquet of white roses that matched the room's floral arrangements perfectly. She was beautiful, I'll give her that. And David's face when he saw her. Pure love. Whatever else was wrong between us, he genuinely loved this woman. Judge Patricia Miller officiated. My old friend looked professional in her robes, but she caught my eye once and smiled. Small nod of acknowledgement. At least someone was glad I was there. The ceremony went smoothly. Traditional vows, ring exchange, the works. When Patty pronounced them husband and wife, the crowd erupted in applause. David kissed Victoria. Perfect moment. Perfect couple. Perfect wedding. Everything Victoria's family wanted. During the recessional, David finally saw me. His eyes went wide when he realized I'd stayed. Victoria noticed his reaction, followed his gaze, spotted me in the back. Her smile faltered for just a second. Quick recovery, but I caught it. The receiving line formed in the adjacent reception room. Traditional setup, bride and groom greeting guests, accepting congratulations, posing for photos. I waited until the line shortened. Didn't want to make a scene during the busy moments. When I approached, Victoria extended her hand first. "Mr. Wilson," she said, correct but cold. "How nice that you could make it." "Congratulations, Victoria. You look beautiful." "Thank you." David was tense. I could see it in his shoulders, his forced smile. "Dad," he said, "glad you're here." Liar. But I didn't call him on it, not yet. "Wouldn't miss it," I said. "How did you—" Victoria started, then caught herself. "How did I what?" David jumped in. "Dad, we should introduce you to Victoria's parents." Dr. Sterling approached with his wife, both smiling, but the smiles didn't reach their eyes. "Robert Sterling," the doctor said, extending his hand. Firm handshake, evaluating grip. "Frank Wilson, David's father. Of course, we've heard so much about you." Lie number 2. They'd heard nothing about me because David never talked about me. "All good things, I hope," I said. Mrs. Sterling stepped forward. "Patricia Sterling, we're so delighted to finally meet you." Finally was doing heavy lifting in that sentence. "What line of work are you in, Frank?" Dr. Sterling asked. Direct question. Moment of truth. "I'm a welder," I said. 35 years in heavy industrial construction." The temperature dropped 10 degrees. "How interesting," Mrs. Sterling said, the same tone Victoria had used 3 years ago. Polite dismissal. "Yes," Dr. Sterling said. "Essential work, I'm sure." Essential, like sanitation or pest control. Necessary, but unpleasant. David jumped in again. "Dad works on large projects. Skyscrapers, bridges." "Infrastructure?" Dr. Sterling nodded. "Very important." Victoria's cousin appeared. Young woman, maybe 25, clearly drunk. "Uncle Robert, is this David's family?" Awkward pause. "This is Frank," Victoria said. "David's father. Oh my God, you're the one who—" The cousin stopped herself, looked around nervously. "The one who what?" I asked. "Nothing," Victoria said quickly. "Sarah, let's get you some water." But Sarah was drunk enough to be honest. "You're the one who wasn't supposed to come today." Silence. Everyone in earshot turned to look. The receiving line stopped moving. "Sarah," David said sharply. "What? Victoria said you were worried your dad might not fit in with our crowd." More silence. Thicker this time. "Sarah, please," Mrs. Sterling said. But Sarah was on a roll. "She said you were embarrassed because he's just a—" "That's enough!" David snapped. Too late. The damage was done. "Just a what?" I asked. Sarah looked around, finally realizing she'd said something wrong. I didn't mean—" "Just a what, Sarah?" Dr. Sterling tried to intervene. "Frank, I'm sure she didn't mean anything by it." "I'd like to hear what she was going to say." Victoria stepped forward. "Damage control mode." "Mr. Wilson, Sarah's had too much champagne. She doesn't know what she's talking about." "I think she knows exactly what she's talking about." The receiving line had completely stopped. Guests were staring. The perfect wedding moment was cracking. "Dad," David said quietly, "can we discuss this privately?" "So your wife's family knows I'm an embarrassment, but we need privacy to discuss it?" "That's not what—" "That's exactly what it is, David." I looked around the room. 200 people watching our family drama unfold. Wedding photographer still shooting, probably getting some candid shots he hadn't expected. 35 years I raised you," I said. "Paid for your college, your car, your emergencies. Never once made you ashamed of who you are." "Dad, please." "But you're ashamed of who I am." Victoria's face was pale. This was not the elegant wedding reception she'd planned. "Maybe we should move this conversation," Dr. Sterling suggested. "Maybe you should stay out of family business," I replied. Now it was war. That's when Tony Anderson appeared. "Frank," he called out from across the reception room, "there's my favorite property mogul." Every head turned. Tony was walking toward us with a huge smile, dressed in his formal catering director attire, but clearly excited to see me. "Tony," I said, shaking his hand, "beautiful job on the setup. Only the best for the Wilson wedding. How's business? Building 3 still pulling in 32 grand a month?" Silence, dead silence. Ed. Victoria's family looked confused. David looked pale. "Business is good," I said calmly. "Frank owns 3 commercial buildings in Queens," Tony announced to the group, completely oblivious to the tension. "Industrial district, prime real estate. This guy's been buying properties for 20 years. Smart money." Dr. Sterling's expression shifted. "Properties. Oh, you didn't know?" Tony laughed. "Frank's one of the biggest private landowners in Queens. Wilson Industrial Properties. Must be worth, what, 12 million now?" The number hung in the air like smoke. Mrs. Sterling's mouth opened slightly. 12 million. "Easy," Tony said. "Maybe more with the market rising. Frank's been playing the long game since the 90s. Started with 1 building, kept expanding. Classic blue-collar success story." David was staring at me like he'd never seen me before. "Dad," he said quietly, Before I could answer, another voice cut through the crowd. "Frank Wilson? Is that really you?" We all turned. A woman in an expensive dress was approaching, huge smile on her face. "Margaret Chen," she said, extending her hand. "Chen Development Corporation. We met at the Queen's Business Council meeting last month." More stares. Queen's Business Council was not a welding union. "Margaret," I said, shaking her hand. "Good to see you." "I had no idea this was your son's wedding. David Wilson, you must be so proud. Your father's company has been instrumental in the Queen's waterfront development project." Victoria looked like she was going to faint. "Company?" she managed to ask. "Wilson Industrial Properties," Margaret said. "Frank's been a major player in Queen's commercial development for years. Didn't you know?" She looked around at the confused faces. "Oh, family modesty. I understand. Frank's always been low-key about his success." Another voice from the crowd. Frank Wilson." A man in a navy suit pushed through the guests. I recognized him immediately. "Commissioner Rodriguez," I said. "Didn't expect to see you here. Wouldn't miss it. When I saw Wilson on the guest list, I had to check if it was you." He turned to the group. "Everyone, this is Frank Wilson. His company just completed the structural work on our new community center in Queens. Beautiful work." "Commissioner?" Dr. Sterling asked weakly. "Queensboro Development Commission," Rodriguez explained. "Frank's been our go-to contractor for municipal projects for the past 5 years. Reliable, professional, always on budget." He looked at David. "You must be David. Your father talks about you all the time. Says you're in marketing?" David nodded, still speechless. "Smart kid. Bet he learned business sense from his old man. Frank's got one of the sharpest minds for real estate I've ever seen." The crowd around us was growing. Word was spreading through the reception that the groom's father was some kind of hidden businessman. A waiter approached, one of Tony's staff. "Excuse me, Mr. Wilson. Mr. Anderson asked me to give you this." He handed me an envelope. "The quarterly report you requested." I opened it. Property income statement for Wilson Industrial Properties. Third quarter 2024. Gross rental income, $267,000. I read aloud. Net profit after expenses, $189,000. I looked up at Victoria's family. Per quarter. Mrs. Sterling's pearls couldn't hide her shock anymore. "That's," she started calculating, "$750,000 a year? In rental income alone," I said. "Not counting property appreciation." Dr. Sterling found his voice. "Frank, we had no idea. David didn't tell you about the family business?" I looked at my son. His face had gone through several shades of pale. "There's no shame in honest work," I said to the crowd. "Whether it's welding steel or managing properties or performing surgery, value comes from integrity, not job titles." Commissioner Rodriguez nodded. "Frank's been a pillar of the Queen's business community for years, always hiring local workers, supporting community projects. Real leadership." Margaret Chen jumped in. "The waterfront development wouldn't have happened without Wilson Industrial's participation. Frank donated land use for the planning phase." "Donated?" Victoria asked. "Pro bono community service," I explained. "Sometimes wealth comes with responsibility." Tony Anderson reappeared with champagne. "We should toast to Frank Wilson, master welder, property mogul, and father of the groom." Several guests raised their glasses. The photographer was getting all of this. Victoria's cousin Sarah, the drunk one who'd started this whole revelation, stumbled forward. Wait, she slurred. "So David's dad is rich?" "Sarah, please," Mrs. Sterling hissed. "No, but Victoria said he was embarrassing because he was poor and worked with his hands and—" "Sarah!" Victoria snapped. But the damage was multiplying. Other guests were listening now, putting pieces together. "So why did David say his father couldn't afford—" someone whispered. "And why isn't he on the program as—" another voice murmured. I watched David's face as the truth settled in. He hadn't just been ashamed of his poor father. He'd been lying about his rich father, to his wife, to her family, to himself. The very wealth that could have impressed Victoria's parents, the social status they valued above everything, had been hidden because David was ashamed of how it was earned. "Dad," David said quietly, "can we talk privately?" "Sure," I said, "right after I present your wedding gift." I reached into my jacket pocket. The manila envelope crinkled. 200 guests watched. The photographer adjusted his lens. This was the moment everything changed. I pulled out the envelope first, manila folder thick with legal documents. "Before I give you your wedding gift," I said to David, "I want everyone to understand what real family means." The crowd pressed closer. 200 people, all listening. 35 years ago, I started with nothing. Welding apprentice, 23 years old, married to David's mother. We lived in a basement apartment in Queens. Saved every penny. Victoria's family was transfixed. This wasn't the story they'd expected. By the time David was born, I'd saved enough to buy my first building. Small warehouse, needed work, but the bones were good. Fixed it up myself, found tenants, reinvested the profits. I opened the envelope, pulled out the property deeds. Building 2 came 5 years later. Building 3 10 years after that. Each purchase strategic, each renovation careful. Built an empire, one weld, one lease, one decision at a time. Judge Patricia Miller had moved closer. She knew where this was going. The plan was always simple, I continued. Build something lasting, create generational wealth, leave David set up for life. I handed him the first document. Partnership agreement for Wilson Industrial Properties. 50% ownership, I said. Effective immediately upon marriage. Congratulations, David. You're a millionaire. David stared at the papers. His hands were shaking. Victoria looked over his shoulder, reading. Her eyes went wide. This says... She started. 12.6 million in assets, I said. Half is now yours, David, $6.3 million. The crowd erupted in gasps and applause. Victoria's parents looked stunned. Commissioner Rodriguez whistled. Frank, that's incredible generosity. That's family, I said. But I wasn't done. I reached into my other pocket, pulled out the check. J.P. Morgan Chase cashier's check, made out to David and Victoria Wilson. And this, I said, holding up the check, is your wedding gift. I showed it to the crowd. The amount was clearly visible. $1.5 million. More gasps. Someone in the back actually applauded. Dad, David whispered. The money comes from the quarterly profits of your new company, I explained. Think of it as your first dividend payment. I handed him the check. David held it like it might explode. Victoria stared at the numbers. Dr. Sterling stepped forward. Frank, this is extraordinarily generous. This is what family does, I said. We invest in each other. We support each other. We show up for each other. Pause. Let that sink in. Even when we're given the wrong wedding date. The temperature dropped again. Victoria's face went pale. Mr. Wilson. You see, I said to the crowd, David was worried I might embarrass him today. A working man with dirty hands at a sophisticated Manhattan wedding. I looked around the room. 200 faces watching. So he gave me the wrong date. September 22nd instead of September 21st. Made sure his blue-collar father wouldn't show up to embarrass him in front of the right kind of people. The silence was deafening. But here's what David didn't understand, I continued. Those dirty hands built everything you see here. The empire you just inherited. The check you're holding. The future you'll never have to worry about. I took a step closer to David. And if you're ashamed of the hands that built your fortune, then you don't deserve the fortune they built. I reached out. David thought I was going to shake his hand. Instead, I took the check back. Dad, what are you... I tore it in half. The sound echoed through the silent room. Dad, no! I tore it again. 4 pieces now. Stop! Victoria screamed. I tore it again. 8 pieces. That's $1.5 million, Dr. Sterling shouted. That was $1.5 million, I corrected. The pieces of checks scattered to the marble floor like confetti. And this, I said, reaching for the partnership papers in David's hands. Dad, please! David tried to pull the documents away, but I was stronger. 35 years of physical labor stronger. I tore the partnership agreement in half. Dad, you can't! I tore it again. Those are legal documents, Mrs. Sterling shrieked. Those were legal documents, I said, more pieces falling to the floor. David's inheritance destroyed in front of 200 witnesses. $6.3 million, I announced to the crowd. Gone. David was on his knees trying to gather the pieces. We can tape them back together. They're still valid. Legal validity requires signatures, I said calmly. These were never signed. Victoria was crying. Real tears, not wedding tears. Why? She sobbed. Why would you do this? I looked down at my son, still crawling on the marble floor, collecting paper scraps. Because wealth without character is worthless, I said. And I won't reward a man who's ashamed of his family. I turned to address the crowd one final time. Ladies and gentlemen, I apologize for disrupting this beautiful celebration, but sometimes a father has to teach his son what really matters. I looked back at David, still on the floor. When you're ready to be proud of your family, son, we'll talk about your inheritance again. I walked toward the exit. The crowd parted like the Red Sea. Behind me I could hear David calling my name, but I kept walking. The oak room doors closed behind me with a soft click. Outside in the hallway, my phone was already buzzing with text messages, but I didn't look at them. I had a long drive back to Queens. The fallout started before I reached my truck. Text messages flooding my phone, missed calls, voicemails. By the time I got to the parking garage, my phone was buzzing nonstop. First message was from Judge Patricia Miller. Frank, that took guts. Call me when you're ready to talk. Second was from Commissioner Rodriguez. Frank, that was either the best or worst parenting I've ever seen. Either way, impressive. Coffee sometime? Third was from Tony Anderson. Holy shit, Frank. That was nuclear. You okay? I didn't answer any of them. Drove back to Queens in silence, thinking about what I'd just done. Destroyed $6.3 million in partnerships. Tore up a $1.5 million check. Humiliated my son at his own wedding. Probably ended our relationship forever, but taught him the most important lesson about respect and family that money can't buy. By the time I got home Sunday morning, the story had gone viral. Not literally viral, this was a private wedding, but viral within our social circles. Queens business community, Brooklyn legal circles, Manhattan society pages. My phone had 47 missed calls. Sunday afternoon, David showed up at my house, still in his wedding suit from the night before. Victoria wasn't with him. He looked terrible. Eyes red, tie undone, hair disheveled. "Dad," he said when I opened the door, "we need to talk." "Come in." We sat at my kitchen table. Same table where I'd made the decision to attend his wedding. Seemed appropriate. "Victoria's parents think you're insane," he said. "I don't care what Victoria's parents think. Victoria thinks you ruined our wedding." "Did I?" David was quiet for a long time. "The photographer got everything," he said finally. "The whole confrontation. The check being torn up. All of it. Good." "Good?" "Evidence," I said, "for when you try to rewrite history later." David looked around my kitchen. Really looked at it for the first time in years. "This house," he said, "it's worth what, $200,000? $240, according to the last assessment. But you're worth $12 million. Was worth $12 million. Now I'm worth $6.3 million. Because you gave me half. Because I destroyed half rather than give it to someone who doesn't respect where it came from." David put his head in his hands. "I fucked up," he said. "Yes, you did. I can't fix this with Victoria's family. Shouldn't have to. Your wife married you, not them. Her father called you unhinged. Her father's a surgeon who inherited his wealth. He's never built anything from nothing. Her mother said you were inappropriate. Her mother wears pearls that cost more than most people's cars and calls that appropriate." David looked up. "Victoria's talking about annulment. That hit me hard. Whatever my feelings about Victoria, I didn't want David's marriage to end because of my actions." "Because of the money?" I asked. "Because of the embarrassment. Because her family will never forget this. Because every time they see me, they'll remember you tearing up that check." "Maybe that's not a bad thing." "Dad!" "David, listen to me. If your wife wants to leave you because you have a father who demands respect, then she was never the right wife." "But the money?" "The money was always conditional." "On what?" "On you being a man worth investing in." Silence. Monday morning, my lawyer called. "Frank, I've been fielding calls all weekend. Half the Queens business community wants to know if you've lost your mind. And the other half wants to buy you a drink." Tuesday, David called. "Dad, I need to ask you something." "Ask." "The partnership papers. Were they really valid?" "They were drafted by the best law firm in Manhattan, notarized, witnessed, ready for signature. So if you hadn't torn them up, you'd be $6.3 million richer right now." Pause. "And the check?" "Real. Cashier's check from J.P. Morgan Chase. $1.5 million. Jesus Christ, Dad. Now you understand what your shame cost you. Is there any way to redo this? Are you asking for financial reasons or personal reasons?" Long pause. "Both," he admitted. "The financial part depends on the personal part." "What do you mean?" "When you're ready to be proud of your father in public, we'll discuss your inheritance again." "I am proud of you, Dad." "No, you're proud of my money. That's different." Wednesday, Victoria called. First time we'd spoken directly since the wedding. "Mr. Wilson, I owe you an apology." "You owe me nothing, Victoria." "I influenced David to exclude you. That was wrong." "Yes, it was. I was worried about my family's reaction." "To what?" "To social differences." "You mean class differences?" "Yes. That's honest, at least." "Mr. Wilson, is there any way we can start over?" "That depends." "On what?" on whether you want to start over because you respect me or because you want the money back. She didn't answer immediately. That told me everything. Thursday, Commissioner Rodriguez called. Frank, Queensboro Development wants to offer you a position. Advisory role on our Community Investment Committee. I'm interested. Good. Your actions at that wedding showed exactly the kind of integrity we need in public service. You approve of what I did? I approve of a man who destroys millions of dollars rather than compromise his principles. That's rare. Friday, 1 week after the wedding, David came back. Dad, I've been thinking all week. And? You were right. About what specifically? About me being ashamed. About choosing Victoria's family's approval over our relationship. About lying instead of standing up for you. Go on. I want to fix this. How? By being proud of you publicly. By telling people the truth about where I come from and what you've built. And Victoria? Victoria's learning. Her parents might take longer. And if they never come around, then that's their loss. I looked at my son. Really looked at him. Still in expensive clothes. Still carrying himself like a Manhattan professional. But something had changed in his eyes. David, the money's not the point. I know. Respect isn't something you can buy back. I know. So what are you asking for? Another chance, to be the son you raised me to be. I stood up, walked to my safe, pulled out a new manila envelope. New partnership papers, I said. 25% ownership instead of 50. David's face fell. Because I don't deserve full partnership anymore? Because you need to earn the other 25%. How? By rebuilding trust. By showing me you understand what family means. By proving you won't choose social status over blood again. David nodded. And the wedding gift? Still torn up on the Plaza Hotel floor. So no money? The money was never about the money, David. It was about respect. I handed him the new partnership papers. 25% of $6.3 million is still life-changing wealth, I said, if you want it. David looked at the papers, looked at me. I want to earn it, he said. Good answer. 6 months later, David and I had coffee every Saturday morning. Not at some fancy Manhattan cafe. At Mickey's Diner in Queens, 2 blocks from my first building. He'd drive out from Manhattan in his BMW, still wearing expensive clothes, but now he'd roll up his sleeves and talk business. Real business. Property management, tenant relations, market trends. Building 2's lease renewal came through, he said one Saturday in March. $38,000 a month for the next 5 years. Good work, I said. That's a 12% increase from the previous lease. I learned from the best. David had earned his 25% partnership through 6 months of hard work, learning the property business from the ground up, visiting job sites, meeting tenants, understanding that wealth doesn't manage itself. How's Victoria? I asked. Better. She's been coming to Queens with me sometimes, seeing the buildings, meeting the tenants. And her parents? Still adjusting. But they invited us to dinner last week. Progress. Slow progress. But Dr. Sterling asked about your welding background, seemed genuinely interested. People can change, I said. Sometimes. David stirred his coffee. Mickey served it in thick white mugs, nothing fancy about it. Dad, I need to ask you something. Shoot. The other 25%. What do I need to do to earn it? I'd been expecting this question for months. It's not about money anymore, David. It's about character. I understand. Do you? Because character isn't something you can fake or buy or inherit. You have to build it, same way I built those properties. One decision at a time. David nodded. So what's the test? There is no test. Character shows up when nobody's watching, when it's hard, when it costs you something. Like tearing up $1.5 million check. Like choosing family over social status. We sat in comfortable silence for a while. Mickey's was filling up with the Saturday morning crowd. Construction workers, small business owners, families from the neighborhood. David used to look uncomfortable around these people. Now he fit in. I have some news, David said. Yeah? Victoria's pregnant. I put my coffee down. Congratulations. We found out yesterday. She's 8 weeks along. How do you feel? Terrified. Excited. Grateful. And Victoria? Happy. Nervous about her parents' reaction. To the pregnancy? To raising a grandchild who's part blue-collar Queens and part Connecticut privilege. I laughed. That kid's going to be interesting. That kid's going to learn about both worlds, David said. The country club and the construction site. Trust funds and hard work. Pearl necklaces and welding masks. Good. Balance is important. David reached into his jacket pocket, pulled out an envelope. "What's that?" "Something I want to show you." He handed me a sonogram photo, blurry black and white image, but clearly a baby. "Due date's October 15th, he said. I stared at the photo. My grandchild. First one. "Dad, I want this kid to be proud of both grandfathers, the surgeon and the welder. They should be. I want them to understand that wealth can come from inheritance or from building something with your hands. Important lesson. I want them to know that respect isn't about what you do for work. It's about how you treat people." I looked up from the sonogram. David's eyes were serious. "Most importantly," he said, "I want them to know that family shows up, no matter what, even when they're given the wrong date." I felt something shift inside my chest. Pride, maybe, or relief.
"David," I said, "you just earned your other 25%. His eyes widened. "Really?" "Really. Full partnership. Equal partners. Wilson Industrial Properties belongs to both of us now." I reached into my own jacket, pulled out the updated partnership papers. I'd been carrying them for 2 weeks, waiting for the right moment. "Congratulations," I said, sliding the documents across the table. "You're now worth $6.3 million. David looked at the papers but didn't touch them immediately. "Dad, can I ask you something else?" "Sure." "When the baby's born, will you teach them to weld?" I smiled. "If they want to learn." "Boy or girl?" "Doesn't matter. Everyone should know how to build something with their hands." David picked up the partnership papers, looked them over. "Equal partners," he said. "Equal partners. So what's our first decision as co-owners?" I pointed to the sonogram photo. "College fund." "Good idea. How much?" "Whatever it takes." David grinned. "I love you, Dad." "I love you too, son." We finished our coffee and headed out to look at a potential fourth building. Father and son, equal partners, family business, the way it should have been all along.